Hi, Gavolt. The Hillary health story alive and kicking. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Brody File. So much for right-wing conspiracies. Now the mainstream media can't help but pay attention to this story. We're going to actually pay attention to it as well in a moment. But first, our exclusive interview with Donald Trump. He recently appeared in D.C. at the Values Voters Summit. Got a very good reception. Of course, we're the Brody File, so we had our backstage pass to see Trump, kind of like our backstage pass for Hannah Montana. And so here we go. Join us backstage at the Values Voters Summit. Let me ask you a little bit about the debate strategy coming up. What do you need to do? What do you want to accomplish in these debates specifically against her?
Win. That's all I want to do. I want to win. Look, she's a bad person. She's a person that has done a horrible job. Her judgment is flawed. She is a person who's taken us into wars, and thousands and thousands and thousands of lives have been lost. You look at what she's done. You look at her strategies. She has no strategy. I mean, Bernie Sanders said it, bad judgment. She has bad judgment. And you can't have this as president. This would be 4 more years of Obama and worse. And as far as the evangelicals are concerned, you can just forget it. She would be actually a disaster.
I was going to ask you about that because there are a lot of traditional conservative Christians that believe that she is very, if you want to call it, anti-biblical in many of her positions, abortion, same-sex marriage. What's your view on what she would mean to Christianity being under attack in this country?
Well, I think she'd be, it is under attack. I mean, you just have to look and see what's happening. It's under tremendous attack. I saw yesterday where they were praying before a football game, and now they're all in trouble for praying before a football game. Who ever heard of this one? Mm-hmm. And those are policies that she agrees with. I don't know if you saw that, the football game where they were praying in the locker room, and now they're in trouble because they heard they were praying in the locker room. And who would have thought this could have happened to our country? And that's Hillary Clinton, and that's people that are supporting Hillary Clinton, but that's not Donald Trump.
I talked to Michelle Bachmann about a week ago. She is very concerned that this will be, and these are her words, the last election, because if Hillary Clinton is president, she's going to do the amnesty thing. It's going to be a lot of citizenship for illegal immigrants, and we won't be able, she's talking as a Republican, won't be able to get this country back. Do you agree with that?
I think it's going to be the last election that the Republicans can win. If we don't win this election, you'll never see another Republican, and you'll have a whole different church structure. You're going to have a whole different Supreme Court structure. And that has to do a lot with what we're doing, because the Supreme Court is, as you know, with Justice Scalia gone, I think you could probably have 4 to 5 judges picked by the next president. Probably a record number, David, probably a record number of judges. And if they pick, the super liberals, probably to a certain extent, people that would make Bernie Sanders happy, you will never have a Supreme Court. We're going to end up with another Venezuela, large-scale version. It would be a disaster for the country.
Just so I understand, when you say last election, are you referring to what Michelle Bachmann was talking about with the citizenship? Because she's going to provide, or Hillary's talking about potentially providing citizenship for many of these illegal citizens. That means Florida and Texas could be gone.
Sure. I think this will be the last election if I don't win. I think this will be the last election that the Republicans have a chance of winning, because you're going to have people flowing across the borders. You're going to have illegal immigrants coming in, and they're going to be legalized, and they're going to be able to vote. And once that all happens, you can forget it, because I guarantee you're not going to have one Republican vote, and it's already a very hard number. Already the path is much more difficult for the Republicans. You just have to look at the maps, and the path is much more difficult. But we're leading. We're leading in a lot of polls. I think the evangelicals and people of religion, frankly, but I think the evangelicals are going to get out and really vote this time. What we're doing in terms of the Johnson Amendment is so absolutely vital. And for the people that don't know the Johnson Amendment, that was where Lyndon Johnson, around 1954, was having a hard time with the church, and he wanted to silence the pastors and ministers, and frankly, priests and rabbis. I guess you could also include everybody, but he wanted to, in this case, silence religion, because he was given a hard time. And he passed an amendment that basically takes tax exemption away if anybody gets involved, says things, gets involved politically. Your leaders, ministers, pastors, and we're going to get rid of that amendment so that they can speak openly and freely. And I'll tell you, I really think that that's had a huge impact on evangelicals, on Christianity, Because if you look at it, it's not exactly like a rocket ship. I mean, I used to go to Sunday school. You don't hear that so much anymore, and lots of other things. So I'm very proud to say that if we get in, we're going to get it done too. We're going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment, and our ministers, our pastors will be able to go and speak.
Donald Trump one-on-one with the Brody File. You know who else went one-on-one with the Brody File? Actor John Voight. That's right, the Deliverance actor. Cue banjos. Anyhow, he was in D.C. stumping for Trump. He spoke to our very own Abigail Robertson. Have a look.
Why are you supporting Donald Trump in this election?
Well, you're asking very good questions. Because I think we're in a spot in the United States. I say in my speech that we have a darkness is covering our country right now, and we need someone who's got a lot of strength and is unafraid and has an ability to solve problems. And he's the fellow.
And have you seen any backlash for supporting Donald Trump?
No, is there any?
All right, now let's get to the Hillary Clinton health issue. Boy, oh boy, this is not the visual you want if you're the Hillary Clinton campaign. They've been trying to avoid this for months, but they can't anymore. And the fact that they were actually forced into admitting that she had pneumonia for 2 days, that's right, they had to wait 2 days until they saw that video came to light. Well, it plays right to the perception that she and her campaign are always hiding information. Still, Donald Trump is doing the smart thing, staying out of it for the most part. Wow, discipline by Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump might not be saying much about the health issue, but the Brody File is. Time for a quick Brody File commentary. Look, who knows exactly what we're going to find out about her health in the next month or two? This is a drip, drip, drip scenario, just like the email private server story. Nobody can ever get a straight answer out of the Clinton campaign. And while that's bad news for Clinton, it's great news for Trump because it plays into the narrative. It's a narrative that he has been a politician who's been around for too long in a corrupt system. The health story looks fishy. The emails look fishy. Both smell stinky. And it can all mean a bed of roses for Trump come Election Day. We're back in a moment. And welcome back to the Brody File. Hey, let's face it, if Donald Trump is going to win the presidency, evangelicals are going to need to show up by the boatload to push him over the top. But right now, this isn't about Trump. It's actually about getting evangelicals out to vote in the first place. One group making a huge push is United in Purpose. They're using technology and grassroots organization to make sure evangelicals take their voting duties seriously this fall. Their leader is Bill Dallas, and our Jenna Browder had a chat with him at this month's Values Voters Summit.
Let's talk about your organization a little bit. How did it come about?
So we started about 7 years ago. We're based in Silicon Valley, and at the end of the day, we're a data company. And what we've been doing is tracking data, and we track data on people's behaviors, attitudes, but at the end of the day, one of the key things we're tracking is, can we get people out to vote in any given election? We have about 200 million files, so we have pretty much the whole voting population in our database in the United States of people that actually vote. And what we do is we track to see what's going to make somebody either vote one way or not vote at all. And our organization helps work with other organizations to get the people that normally don't vote out to vote. In the last election, 2012, there was 39 million Christians that did not vote. So what we've been tracking over the last 4 years is those 39 million Christians who did not vote, what do we need to do messaging to get a larger percentage of those out than in the previous election.
And what is that messaging?
So again, one of the key things, which again, Christians are no different than non-Christians, jobs and the economy is incredibly important, which again is why Donald Trump is very appealing to a lot of people, because he understands business. It is still the number one issue. Now, as a key issue for Christians is going to be religious liberty, and that's going to fall into judges. Judges is critically important. So if you had to say the two issues that Christians are falling on, one is that everybody falls in Christian, non-Christian jobs. For Christians in particular, religious liberty, and that's going to tie into the judges. releasing those initial judges' names that he did for a consideration for the Supreme Court is exactly what Christians wanted to hear.
Do you think Christians get it this time around? Will they show up at the polls?
Will they show up at the polls? You know what? It's still, it's still to be determined. As you know, it's after Labor Day is when we start really understanding it better. Prior to Labor Day, which has been over the last few months, it's like trying to sell Christmas trees in July.
What do we need to be doing to encourage our peers to be voting?
Yeah, Chuck Colson said it best. It's the conversation across the fence. It's the conversation at the dinner table. It's the conversation at barbecues, and it's doing it in a winsome way. Trying to fight and argue and all is never the way. It doesn't win a conversation. It's just beginning the dialogue. If all Christians, right, that are engaged in the process would just get one other Christian to get involved in the political process by voting, that 39 million Christians that don't vote, again, if we could get that down to where 29 million Christians didn't vote, we could just bring it down by 10 million, it changes the whole future of the country.
Yeah, course of history.
Bill Dallas here on the Brody File. We're back in a moment. And welcome back to the Brody File. Evangelicals and voting, that mix has one word attached to it: pathetic. There are 90 million self-identified evangelicals in America. Only half are registered to vote. And get this, only half of the ones that are registered to vote actually vote. That means out of roughly 90 million evangelicals, maybe 30 million are voting. That means 60 million are sitting on the sidelines. Not good. Our next guest wants Christians to understand that voting is not your right, it's actually your duty. David Barton is CEO of Wall Builders. He goes around the country talking about the importance of evangelicals voting biblical values, and he explains our country's history from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. We actually sat down with him recently about that, and of course we had to start our conversation with who else? Donald Trump. Talk to me a little bit about what you see the potential here for him. He's kind of all over the place, and I know Christians are trying to kind of figure out him and what he might stand for. What's your sense of what he might be able to do here?
There's a couple things. Let me address the Christian part first, because Christians are trying to figure him out, and they really don't need to. Because the Bible is real clear that it's not about the personalities you put in office, it's the type of policies you get from those people. You can have a righteous David in office, but if he numbers the people and has a census and God brings judgment on the nation, you can have a righteous Hezekiah in office and he decides to do bad things in foreign affairs and God brings judgment on the nation. So you can have good guys that do bad things, or you can have Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar who do good things. So it's really more about the policies they produce than it is about the personality of the people who are there. And Christians, particularly in the last 15, 20 years, are looking at personalities more than they are policies. So you go to the Bible, God says, top policies, judges. Isaiah 126, the righteousness of the land is based on the judges in the land. So the first question for a presidential election is, what kind of judges am I going to get? Pro-life, whatever. Second question is Israel, because the covenant in Genesis 12:3, however we treat Israel, God's going to treat us the same way. Doesn't matter who our leader is. Doesn't matter if we got a righteous leader. If they do the wrong things with Israel, we're all in trouble. So the second thing you have to vote on is, what am I going to get from Israel? Is this a leader going to connect us with Iran, going to connect us with the Palestinians, or are we going to connect with Israel's enemies more than Israel? That's a problem. Third thing is you go to the 10 Commandments. God gave 613 laws, but in Exodus 23 he said, but here's my top 10. And so as you look at the top 10, one's religious acknowledgments. I'm the Lord thy God, acknowledge me. That's conscience protection, because that's part of our religious acknowledgement. Which candidate's going to do a better job protecting conscience from LGBT attack, for example? The bakers and the florists and the others. Second thing, it says, hey, adultery's wrong, which means sex is to be confined to a man and a woman in a lifelong union. Any arrangement of sex outside of that is wrong. So whether it's homosexual, premarital, or whether it's extramarital, it's all wrong. But who's going to be the best one at defending traditional marriage? The other one that God puts in his top 10 is don't shed innocent blood. Mine goes right to abortion. So those are all 5 top 10 policies that you can look at and say, you know what, I don't care what the personality of the leader is, which one's going to give me these 5 policies that exalt the nation. So that's the first thing on Christians. But the second thing is Trump provides a paradigm that Christians are not used to. We're so used to having government leaders. We think in terms of governmental leaders. With a business leader, you do things totally different. It's not how much he knows, it's the people he puts around him. And so Trump has lost his fortune several times, but he rebuilt. How come he keeps rebuilding it back to a billionaire level? Because he keeps taking the best people and putting them over those endeavors. And so as far as Trump's concerned, he doesn't have to be deep on the issues because he uses a CEO model, not a governmental model. It's about who he chooses.
This lack of energy within the body of Christ when it comes to voting. We've heard the numbers: 90 million self-identified, half are registered, half of those don't even vote. So what is your sense as to why that is going on? What needs to change, and how can it change?
That sense of why we don't vote when we should is very simple. We have a very selfish view of what we do with voting. And I say that in the sense of most Christians think that voting is a right. It's not. It's a duty. Because if you think it's a right, I'll decide whether I vote or not. It's my right, it's my choice. If you think it's a duty, I don't have a choice whether I'm going to vote. I have to vote. And once you make that decision, I have to vote, then the choice is, all right, who do I choose? And that's a whole different paradigm. We're still working on whether I want to vote or not. It's my choice. It's my right. No, it's not. It's a duty. I look at Matthew 25 and Luke 19, where the Lord gave a certain entitlement, if you will, a certain trust to the people. Said, you take care of that till I get back. And he came back and said, what'd you do with this? I didn't do anything with it. You're in trouble. And that's our vote. I gave you a vote. What'd you do with that vote? I decided not to use it. That was not an acceptable answer back in Matthew 25 or Luke 19, but that's the way Christians think. It's my vote. I'll do what I want to. That's selfish. It's not your vote. It's God's vote.
David Barton here on the Brody File. All right, coming next, all he wanted to do was pray with his players. Now Coach Kennedy is fighting back. Abigail Robertson with the details when we come back. And we're back here on the Brody File. Time now for our exclusive interview with Coach Joe Kennedy. You remember him? He's the high school football coach who was put on administrative leave because, I know, here it comes, he wanted to pray with the players at the 50-yard line. Well, the school district out in Washington State said no, and now Joe Kennedy is suing them for discrimination, saying they violated his First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and religion. Abigail Robertson spoke to the coach this past week. Have a look.
How did you wind up in this position?
I got to say it's just God. I mean, there's no other explanation for it. Here I am, a Marine, who started coaching football, and next thing I know, I'm in the middle of this huge ordeal over a prayer. It's amazing. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think you would lose your career over praying after football games?
No. Of all the things that, I could probably get in trouble for, yelling at kids and making them, do push-ups too much or some of those kind of things, praying is the farthest thing I ever thought anyone could be fired for.
Mm-hmm. What type of warnings, or did you receive any warnings? For praying, did they ever ask you?
No, it was, they'd known I was doing it for the past 8 years. It was something that really helped out our league as far as after a game. The tensions are still pretty high. These kids are, pretty emotional about losing or winning, and, so it just that moment of peace afterwards of thanks, it's always been a great thing throughout our entire football league. And for it to be something bad, it kind of took everybody by, kind of shocked everyone.
What has the response been from the players in the community after you were fired?
The kids were, when the media stuff started, they thought that was pretty cool, but that they never thought they would lose their coach, and I never thought I would lose, my team, and I was new to all this. Really didn't understand really what was happening, but the outpouring across America was incredible. I mean, just everybody reached out and was so supportive of it. It's been really great.
Mm-hmm. So you were terminated last spring, so what have you been doing since you lost your job?
Oh, I've been trying to keep myself busy. If I sit there and think about it, I mean, it hurts. So I started going back to school, about ready to finish my master's degree, normal work, running marathons, trying to stay as busy as possible and raising a family. So yeah, been pretty busy.
Mm-hmm. And I heard that the season started a week ago. So do you plan on attending the football games?
This will be tonight we have our second game. I was at the first one last week and we get a win. Way to go Knights, that was awesome. But this will be the only game I think I'm gonna miss unless they reinstate me.
Mm-hmm. And what was the reaction from the players to see you at the game last week?
It was a little shocking at first because I was standing there waiting for them to, come up from the field, and when they saw me, they were like, "There's coach," and they just started, all of a sudden they all started coming over and high-fiving me and stuff, and they got a game to go play, so the coach was like, "Come on, get over there." But afterwards, it was big hugs, and yeah, it was good to see those guys.
So you filed a lawsuit in August. So what are you claiming in your lawsuit, and what do you hope to win from that?
That's a good lawyer question. I just want to stand up for, the religious freedoms that everybody's supposed to have. I served our country for 20 years to support and defend the Constitution, and I don't understand how the freedoms that are in the Constitution don't apply to people in America. So really, I'm standing up for that, and for anybody who doesn't have a voice. It's just something I think every American should do, is stand up.
Coach Joe Kennedy here on the Brody File. We are back in a moment. And welcome back, everybody. Hey, before we leave you, we just wanted you to know that the Brody File has interviewed Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson. That interview coming later this month. Get ready to be in a state of Zen. Oh, speaking of being in a state of Zen, we're never in a state of Zen. We're on the move. Check us out. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Sometimes we even end up on America's Most Wanted list. It's not a list we're proud of, but hey, we're movers and shakers and criminals. No, we're not. That's it for this week. Until next time, everybody, God bless. Have a great week.